It is Friday the 28th of the 11th, 2025. That means only one thing, that of course there are a multitude of F1-centric threads at which we need to pull. Andrea Stella's come out and said some things. We will speak to it, talking about excessive plank wear and proportional punishment. What are we doing here, Andrea Stella? Surely the rules are the rules, are the rules are the rules. And whether it's a millimetre or a metre, an infringement is an infringement and you get the penalty. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen because he said some things about Lando Norris and what would have happened were he to have that MCL 39 underneath him. So too, we'll talk about George Russell and the meeting that happened yesterday about rules being rules, driver guideline setting. So too, we'll preview very briefly the Qatar Grand Prix and which one of these bods of the 20 has the highest chance of netting themselves 25 points, and what does that mean in the first instance? Oh, the humanity, Axel, always 5 red lights, Eddie. Too much, what's going on? Remember, Red Bull has the same car as last week. Indeed, they'll be coming with all of the upgrades. You bet your bottom dollar they will. Acutely aware now of the circumstance that affronts them. If they don't win this year, then what do they think happens next year? Especially if many are saying, F1 aficionados up and down the grid, that they won't build themselves a god tier car in 26. I'll tell you, Maximilian Verstappen will leave. But before we discuss all things Maximilian Verstappen, let me show you this. Andrea Stella gave an interview to F1.com. In it, he talked about a couple different things. In the first instance, excessive plank wear and what he thinks should have happened. And in the second instance, he addresses what's happened with Oscar Piastri. Roll the first clip, Cameron.
And one important point is that when it comes to technical infringements, there's no proportionality. Like we were off by 0.12 millimeters, and yet this leads to a disqualification. So definitely there's a point of discussion as to making sure that when infringements are minor, and when infringements are totally unintended and related to something that happens that the team kind of was not in condition to control, ideally you have proportional consequences, repercussions, rather than such a severe kind of consequence.
James Jolie.
I mean, it sounds good on paper, Andrea Stella. In theory, what you're saying absolutely makes sense. That, I mean, if this were a crime, then a lesser penalty should get lesser time. But this is sports. Rules are rules, Andrea Stella. If that's what you want, well, if your excessive plank wear is 1 millimetre, then you get 1 point deducted. If it's 2 millimetres, then therefore you must get to. If that's what you want, Andrea Stella, I would argue that that's awfully complicated and probably too lengthy in terms of its rules and regs, too verbose. Fans can't understand that. It needs to be simple, right? Is it offside? Yes. So then it's not a goal. That's simple. If this, then that. I don't know why Andreas, well, I do know why Andreas Stella's talking like this, because again, he feels aggrieved because they got disqualified. Championship back on. So too, Andreas Stella was asked what happened with Oscar Piastri. Gangbusters earlier on in the season, first 9 races, nobody could keep with him. Since then, something's happened. All of a sudden, the suspension geometry upgrade has caught up with him. The one that he said he didn't need because, again, he wasn't a proper upgrade in absolute terms. Now Oscar Piastri, around low grip tracks in particular, looks like an also-ran, whereas previously he looked like Ayrton Senna. When asked what's happened to Oscar Piastri, explain us why the trend towards the downside has been so material there for Andrea Stella. Stella responded in kind like this.
Car faced a few circuits in which the car needed to be driven in a certain way. There were circuits in which you have to slide the rear to get rotation. You have to use the brakes to kind of generate this little amount of rear locking that helps the front. And this is something on which with Oscar we are still working in terms of making it like a natural way of driving. And I think this, combined with the fact that Lando and Max in particular, I think elevated the game, looked like in relative, Oscar took a step back. I think this is a combination of technical reasons above all, like initially for Lando, in the first part of the season was mainly technical reasons that put Lando in a little bit of difficulty. And the game now is so competitive that as soon as you lose a little bit of the edge in terms of classification, you may lose 4 or 5 positions. Car faced a few circuits in which the car...
Interesting that from Andrea Stella. He's underscored what I feel like most of us knew, not least of whom Mark Hughes. For the avoidance of doubt, all F1 journeys are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. Hughesy, for the longest time, has been barking up the tree that speaks like this: that Oscar Piastri is less overlappy as far as his inputs, both brake and throttle. That Lando Norris deals better with a sliding car. That's what you need to do around low grip circuits. Mention no names, the Mexican Grand Prix, particularly if you're going to heat up your fronts to the optimal temperature, all the while maintaining your rears, not degrading or graining them. When that's the challenge, when that's the mission, should the drivers choose to accept it, then Lando Norris 2.0 has the upper hand, and that's what Oscar Piastri has been struggling with. Andrea Stella gives credence to that thesis there, saying that they've been trying to help him, but again, it's just not something that he deals well with. Hopefully for Oscar Jack Piastri fans all around the world, now 24 points adrift of Lando, his teammate in the drivers' standings. Hopefully going into Qatar, he can replicate for his previous highs, a second and a third around Qatar, because it's high, medium speed corners of medium duration, Oscar Piastri and McLaren's natural habitat. Therefore, here's what else is important, Jack. Maximilian Verstappen has talked about the McLaren circumstance of late. He said if they'd asked him to do what it sounds like they're asking Oscar to do, or at least asked Oscar to do, then Max Verstappen will tell them to F off. How very dare you? Do you know what I mean? I'm here to race. Otherwise, why even turn up? Race and therefore win. Why? Because, of course, Maximilian Verstappen is a fire-breathing dragon of an F1 paddler. Chariots of fire settings. Only here for the dub. And don't believe me, but he's talked about this. And again, an oft put forth thesis that sounds something like this. Had Max Verstappen had that MCL 3.9, then the championship would have been over about five races ago, chap. Peter D Wins, a friend of the channel, has been espousing that thesis for a long while now, and I think he's onto something. It feels and looks a little bit like 2012 Fernando Alonso versus Sebastian Vettel. Then Vettel was the benefactor of Adrian Newey fast car privilege, normalised for that. Every F1 aficionado worth their metal would have said that Fernando Alonso should have won in 2012. And are we not looking at that this year? So many times has Max Verstappen been the difference, given credence to the theory of Franz Tost that he's worth anywhere between 2 and 3 tenths on average, as versus the other 19 on the grid. That's why Mexican journos are like, what's going on? That's why Lando Norris is getting booed on the podium, because people think roundly by consensus that this isn't just and it's not fair. If indeed Lando Norris steps up and wins the championship of the drivers' variety. Don't believe me? Well, Max Verstappen has chimed in on this, and it's important here. Gangbusters, nuking therefore all and sundry, not least of whom are the McLaren drivers in Lando Norris in particular. Roll the clip.
Another one, but we also have to be realistic. We are in this fight still because of other people's failures, not because of, if you look at the whole of a season, what we did. Yes, we did really well. We have really maximized pretty much all races before the ones that I mentioned. But if we would have been in the position of how dominant of a car we should, well, they had, let's say like that, championship would have been over a long time ago. Another.
Done. Sakaboy. Gonzo. The championship would have been over a long time ago, Max says, if he'd had the car that Lando Norris has been benefiting from all season long. And who am I to disagree? Especially if past this prologue and you consider Saudi Arabia qualifying, the British Grand Prix, notwithstanding the car being a dog, same thing earlier on in the season when he was beating them at Suzuka. I don't know. I think Max is onto something here. How could you say anything to the contrary with a straight face? And then for the Qatar Grand Prix, it's important that we look at the odds now. This is how it looks. Maximilian Verstappen has the whip hand. I need to give a cheeky prediction at this point, bearing in mind that odds makers are saying if you run 100 simulations of the Qatar Grand Prix under these circumstances, that Max is your red hot favourite, that he would win it 47.6% of the time, Lando Norris 36.3% of the time, Oscar Piastri 13%, and King George Russell 6.6%. How could one back against Maximilian Verstappen when he's in this form with these stakes? In that interview, he spoke about pressure as well. He said, listen, I've always been this way under pressure, that the difference between the good ones and the great ones is the ability to deliver under the most pressurised circumstances, the most important points, like, I don't know, say the championship rounds in 2025, final 2 Grand Prix. I mean, who better than Maximilian Verstappen, if past his prologue, to operate under these circumstances? And then here's your picks to click. These are the timetables, the times that you need to know. We go live 30 minutes before lights out each and every single time. 12:30 we'll be here for FP1. Then you get yourself a cheeky sprint qualifying a little later on. Pause the video if you need those numbers. And those are all British standard times, so rework those. Again, I want to show you this. This is important as well. We said we'd talk about some driver guidelines as a suffix. Adam Cooper reports that there was a meeting yesterday, and in it, they spoke about driver guidelines. The drivers haven't been too happy, not necessarily for the guidelines, but the way that they've been instituted for. Mention no names: Oscar Piastri and Kimi Antonelli at the Brazilian Grand Prix, Sainz versus Behrman at the Italian Grand Prix, and Sainz and Lawson's cheeky love kiss at the Zandvoort Grand Prix. In the final instance, we're talking about the application of DSGs. In Sainz versus Behrman, we're talking about overtaking round the outside to trailer park girls. And in Piastri and Antonelli, we're talking about overtaking on the inside. And again, the FIA have been nothing if not consistently inconsistent, the exact thing that they're not supposed to be doing. They need to sort it out. Now, for now, they've held their annual driver standings review meeting, and in it, there is no change. For now, though, chat, they will need to sort it out, continuously improve the sport that's worth anywhere up to $24.5 billion US as of the time of writing. Here's what happened at the FIA. The meeting. Key takeaways: a stronger emphasis on respect for yellow flags. Touche. But that's always going to be the way in F1, lest we forget that in low-level karting, your boy Cameron CC used to see amateur karters always put up their hands on the back of a yellow flag so that the stewards at least knew that they'd noticed it, all the while burying the photo. If there is a millisecond of advantage in yellow flags, then you bet your bottom dollar these bods are going to take it. Why not just do a virtual safety car? Do you know what I mean? Pull the virtual safety car, make sure everybody's deltas remain the same, and then done. I don't know. I don't get it. I suppose with a double raved yellow, sometimes you've got to be quick and reactive, such is the urgency of an incident on track. But nevertheless, key takeaway: stronger emphasis on respecting yellow flags. A shared view that guidelines cannot cover every scenario. True. But then that's why you need some decent stewards and a robust sports director, a rewriting of the rules and regs and the sporting code of conduct so that they actually mean something, so they don't read as if a 5-year-old has penned them. Surely this is not rocket science, nor is it solving for Fermat's last theorem. This is basics. This is counting. But again, here, I mean, this is something that you guys already know as far as the FIA is concerned. So a shared view that the guidelines cannot cover every scenario, underlining the importance of having experienced driver steward on each panel. Blue flags, respect for those. George Russell has said it better than I ever could. Ultimately, what you need is this. You need yourself a set of stewards who are full-time so that you have some sort of consistency from race weekend to race weekend. And how very dare we ask for something as trivial as that in a $1 billion sports franchise such as Formula One. Listen, here's my predictions for the race. I think Maximilian Verstappen could clean sweep this. I anticipate him because it's a pressurised circumstance. Ordinarily, Lando Norris 1.0 turns up and he's brilliantly quick. He's fast. He's flary, glint in the eye. Men want to be him. Women want to be with him. James Hunt settings, I get it. I understand it. But in pressurised circumstances, as we said a gazillion times, I'm not sure Lando Norris has proved himself capable of turning up as 2.0 and not 1.0, lest we forget the starts. You saw it last Grand Prix weekend, Las Vegas, pressurised circumstance, Max Verstappen breathing down his neck, and Lando crumbled, instantly reverted from iteration 2.0 to 1.0. So again, in pressurised circumstance, here are my predictions. I think Max Verstappen's going to clean sweep it. If he has the car underneath him, as so many are saying, lest we forget, decent record around here, qualified on pole last year, but for taking a new engine, George Russell would not have been for the record books on P1 during quali. I think he'll nail it. I think he'll set it. I think this is Grand Schlem time. I think Max Verstappen, I'm calling Max Verstappen for everything, as boring as that might sound. It's easy. But my crystal ball is as murky as the next person's. Here's what I'm calling. Max will nail the sprint qualifying. He'll nail the sprint because he's a sprint meister. He will nail shortly thereafter qualifying for the race proper. And Max Verstappen will nail the race barring accidents, so long as on the proviso that he has the car capable of winning a cheeky race. Red Bull, please advise. It's going to get techie than techie things. We'll be back 30 minutes before FP1 as always. You guys have been legends. I appreciate each and every single one of you to the moon and back ad nauseum. And for that, I make no apology. Between now and next time, prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.